faithful receive knowledge. I mean, we are all here, we have very much faith in the Guru, in the grace of divine Sadhvi and Swamiji, which is why we are all here. And it's a wonderful, and I think we are very privileged and blessed to be part of such beautiful and blessed ceremony this morning of Guru Puja, which was very, very heart-touching for me, I think. It was really, really precious and wonderful moment. Felt very, very blessed. I'm sure we all did. And I would like to request Puja Sadhviji to take us to our next satsang of dealing with stress, depression, and anxiety. Thank you.
It's such a tragic irony that here we are, so blessed, beyond blessed, you could say. And yet, we suffer. We have roofs over our heads. We know where our next meal is coming from. Most of us have the problem of having to say, okay, I think I've had enough, rather than there's not enough food. We have to exercise restraint because there's so much abundance. We have more than enough of everything. Our children are doing well, if we're parents. We're doing well if we are the children. And yet, we suffer. Stress, anxiety, depression, anger. This is the stuff that all of the questions come from. Not just here, this is true wherever we go. This is true every day in Rishikesh. I have everything. Everything is great. Why am I so stressed out? I have everything. Everything is great. Why am I angry? Why do I experience this anger? Why do I experience this depression? And so what I want to do with the time that we have today is, as usual, but particularly with this topic, is to speak for a little while and then to open it up for questions. I know we have some questions that had come in during the private meetings earlier today, but really to work through this. Let's leave this behind. Let's be free. The highest goal of a spiritual practice is freedom. Freedom from the chains that bind us. Freedom from the jail that we live in, of our own minds, of our own making. But we have to realize that we are the ones who make ourselves free. As I began the very first day, the problem is the mind. The mind is the one that either binds us or allows us to be free. So they're all, of course, interconnected. See, stress, anxiety, depression, our anger, our emotions, they're all interconnected. But let's look at them a little bit because it's an epidemic. Stress, to me, is very interesting, only in that we have accepted it as the new normal. Talk to any physician, and everyone knows that stress is the cause of a huge percentage of illnesses. We've eradicated mostly the stuff that you get from mosquitoes and rats and bad water, and we've got Modern medicine has been fantastic at giving us either prevention or cures of that which everybody was dying of 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And yet, here we are in the stress-induced illnesses. So physicians tell us stress is what induces illnesses. We all know it doesn't feel good. And yet, here we are ready to take it as the new normal. How are you? Oh, I'm stressed. Yeah, me too. The example that I always give about this is, if you wake up in the morning, you take your temperature and the thermometer says 103. You ask everyone, what's your temperature? And everybody says, 98.6. You say, oh, I have a fever. Something is wrong. You go to the doctor. Whether your allopathic doctor, your Ayurvedic doctor, your homeopathic doctor, whatever it is, you're going to go to the doctor. You're going to do some kind of treatment. Home care, hospital care, whatever it may be. But you understand there is a disease, an infection ravaging my body. But if you ask around everyone, what's your temperature? And they all say 103. You're going to say, oh, all right, me too. Now, that disease is still ravaging your body. The infection is still going to kill you. But now you're not going to go to the doctor because now you think, this is normal. Everybody says 103. So to me, the greatest tragic irony of stress is how readily we've all accepted it. You're stressed out? Yeah, I'm also stressed out. Okay, cello. Chai peeler. Right? I mean, this has just become the new normal. It's ravaging us. Our minds, our bodies, our hearts. We need to stop accepting it as normal. And the only way to do that is to ask ourselves, well, why are we stressed then? Okay, so how can I treat it? The answer is not alcohol, drugs, all of our addictions. That's what we go into. This is not the treatment. Treatment is to realize, why am I feeling stressed? And the core cause of stress is, I want what I want to happen. And I'm worried it's not going to happen. Now, the stress response originally is in our bodies because what we want to happen is that we should stay alive. It's a survival. Stress response, as everybody, all of the scientists and doctors in the room know, is it's the body's reaction to a perceived threat. All of the energy of the inside of our bodies, digestion, reproduction, all of these great systems in our bodies, all of that energy rushes to our extremities, our arms, our legs, in what we call a fight or flight response, so that we can run away or fight the attacker, the tiger, the bear, the warring tribe from next door. But these days, that's not what most of us are faced with. We're faced with, oh my God, somebody's doing better than I am in school. I wanted to be number one, that guy's number one. That was my parking spot, you took it. I've got somewhere to go and you are taking way too long checking everybody out at the store. This is the stuff, if you look at our day-to-day life, what are we stressed about? Oh, God, the lady at the grocery store. Oh, the guy took my parking spot. Oh, this colleague at work. Sitting in the next cubicle, hearing me share my ideas, and this guy runs to the boss with my ideas. This is the stuff our stress is made of today. This is not survival. This is not life or death. But this is the cause of our stress. So it's, I want something to happen, and I'm afraid it's not going to happen. Therefore, the only antidote to it, the only antidote to stress, is acceptance and faith. An awareness that we are being taken care of. Doesn't mean we don't have to work, we do. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna makes this very clear. Stand up, do your duty. Fight the battle. Fight it well, fight it sincerely, fight it perfectly. And don't worry about the results. It's interesting because Lord Krishna's God. He could have very easily said to Arjuna in the beginning, hey, don't worry, you've got this one. You got it back, I promise. You're going to win this fight. Right? He knew. He's God. But he doesn't tell him. He doesn't say to Arjuna in the beginning, don't worry. Yes, it's going to be tragic. Yes, you're going to lose family members. Yes, you will suffer, and you will win. He doesn't even tell him that. He says, do not be attached. Do your duty. Do it sincerely, do it fully, and do not be attached. And if we can really take that in our lives, it's the perfect antidote to stress. Because the antidote is not, well then forget it, I'm just not going to do anything and not care. We step up to the plate. We do our very best with the sincerity and the integrity and the commitment and the love that we have in us. And we have faith that the universe is going to give whatever the right response to it should be. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, sometimes we'll get what we want, sometimes we won't. There's no scripture I know of or teaching that I know of in which God says, don't worry, be devoted to me, and you're going to be the one who gets every raise, every promotion. You're going to be top in the class. Everybody around you is going to do what you want, when you want it, how you want it. Everybody's going to love you. Everybody's going to appreciate you. Everybody's going to talk nicely to you. Everything you want will happen. God doesn't say that. A spiritual path is not an inoculation against bad things happening, against things that we don't want happening, or not getting the things we do want. It's not an inoculation against that. It's not insurance that we're going to get what we want. What it is insurance that we're going to stay connected. And that ultimately the reason we are here, which as we've been discussing, is to know who we are, to connect with the divine within ourselves, to open to that, to accept this incredible invitation that the universe has given us in this human birth to experience divinity. That's the only promise. So if we can keep that mantra in our mind of not being attached, not being attached, not being attached, it's all in God's hands. Whatever is supposed to flower and blossom will flower and blossom. We plant the seeds, we water them, we shine the sun on them, we do the very best we can. They don't always blossom. There's always all sorts of unforeseen karmic factors and things. My favorite story about this is when I was living in San Francisco. I had moved to San Francisco from Palo Alto. And in Palo Alto, we had a very nice backyard. And I would grow herbs for the kitchen. I love to cook, and I used to do a lot of cooking. And so I'd grow basil and all sorts of other cooking herbs. We moved to San Francisco. I no longer have a backyard. I have a windowsill that holds 3 pots. And so in my windowsill garden, I plant the seeds. And they don't sprout, they don't grow. And I look across, my neighbor's got things sprouting and growing, so I know the weather's okay. And I keep buying newer and newer seeds, better and better seeds. And I'm starting to get really frustrated. Weeks are going by and I can't even get a sprout out. And I'm starting to have that thing going on inside that happens to us on the most superficial level all the way down to the deepest level, of that internal sense of, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this happen? Why isn't what I want happening? One day I come home from school early. Usually I only came home in the late evenings, but one day I come home early. And I see that this cat whom we had adopted when we moved from Palo Alto into the city, with an indoor-outdoor cat, was in my potted plants, going like this in the dirt. Flinging the dirt all over the place. Suddenly, the absence of sprouts, the absence of basil, the absence of herbs made perfect sense. Not a problem with the seeds, not a problem with my gardening ability, simply this unknown extra factor of the cat who every time I planted something would go in and toss the dirt along with the seeds onto the ground 2 stories below. And I mention this because this is what happens in our lives. When we speak about karma, and I won't go too much into that direction because that'll just take us into a completely different topic, but when we speak about karma, you have to think about it as a tapestry of threads that are woven together. And each of us is a thread, and each aspect of our life is a thread, and they're all woven together. And at certain intersections, things seem stressful. Things even seem bad. And it doesn't make sense, and we can't figure it out. And the only way to really understand things is if we could somehow, by God's grace, get this full tapestry vision, which tragically we're not given the sight to have, which is why so many of us are in stress. If you could see the full tapestry, you'd understand, yeah, okay. Now I understand why this. Now I understand why that. Now I know this purpose. Now I know why that. But we can't. And this is why I said faith. Because faith in the weaver of the tapestry, faith in the divine artist who is weaving our threads with all of the other threads of the universe, that faith in the divine, when Lord Krishna says, don't be attached to the fruits of your labor. Surrender it to me. Surrender whatever you do to me. He's the weaver of the tapestry. And this is where that faith is so essential, to know wherever this thread is weaving, this is where I'm supposed to be woven, at this intersection of time and space. And my job is just to give as much as I possibly can to this moment. When we don't get what we want, when that expectation is not fulfilled, Pujya Swamiji always says, expectation is the mother of frustration, and acceptance is the mother of peace and joy. So if our expectation is what's causing this stress, I want it to be like this, I want it to be like that. I've planned a picnic, why is it raining? I wanted that job, I wanted that husband or wife, I wanted that house, I wanted that life. I want these people to be nice to me. I want you to remember my birthday and anniversary. I want you to bow down and touch my feet. I want this. I want that. That expectation, that's the mother of our misery. And the acceptance. And acceptance, by the way, is very different than resigning ourselves. Acceptance is not, well, all right, I give up. Acceptance is joyful. Acceptance is, okay, God, I'm in your hands. If this is what you want from me in this moment, so be it. But when we can't get there, these expectations lead to that frustration, and that's what brings us into anger. And the dilemma with this, the way that this kills us, and again, speaking to the doctors in the room, we know that it kills us, not just emotionally, but physically. The way that it kills us is, it turns us into a victim. Because every time we are angry, we are convinced it is someone else's fault. And it's an amazing, mutually agreed upon, unanimous consensus to deceive ourselves. And worse than deceive ourselves, to actually handicap ourselves by telling us our misery is someone else's fault. We come together and we say, oh my God, you won't believe what my husband did today, my kids, my mother-in-law, my boss. And we say to each other, oh, wow, God, that's really horrible. Yeah, you really should be upset. Can't believe you put up with that. We're in this complicit, conscious agreement to keep ourselves trapped as victims. No one else is making us angry or hurt, in pain. If I'm angry, I have created anger in me. If I am in pain, I have created pain in me. The outer situation has just happened. It has rained on my picnic. The stock market has plummeted. The person who I wanted to say the right thing has said the wrong thing. Who I wanted to do one thing has done the opposite. The person I trusted has betrayed me. The person I loved has left me. That situation has happened. An external situation done by Mother Nature or the people around us. But my internal reality is my choice. We create within us our own anger, our own joy. The way you know that is, if you don't believe this, because it's the exact opposite of how we've always thought and how we've always been taught. So it takes a moment, but here's a really good way to understand it. If you are sitting next to an air conditioner, here we have central ACs, it's coming in from the vents. But in India, we've got just ACs on the wall. You sit really close to the AC, you get a lot of cold air. You sit close to a heater, you get a lot of hot air. Because the cold air and the hot air is being generated in that machine. The farther you get from that machine, the less cool air or hot air you get. Go to another room around the wall, you no longer have any experience of the cold air or the hot air because it's being generated by that machine. But now think about your own internal reactions. And this is true for the good as well as the bad. So let's start with the positive. You love someone. We experience love. Okay, so seeing that person has metaphorically turned on your internal love manufacturing plant. that person, what they've said, what they've done, just the look of their face, their mere presence, has catalyzed your internal love manufacturing plant to go on. And now it's producing love at full speed, and it feels great. Now that person says, I'll see you later. I've got to go to the grocery store. Be home in an hour. I'm going to work. I'll be home in a few hours. I'll see you this weekend. You don't actually feel any less love inside you, do you? When they go to the grocery store, does your love diminish exponentially by every foot they walk away? Of course not. Think back for a moment to all of your loved ones in your cities and your countries. You can sit right here and feel that love because it's inside you. It's not in them. They've just catalyzed your own internal love manufacturing plan. And the reason that this is such a beautiful thing to know is because then, if we're not with them, either just temporarily because they've gone to the market, or in a more long-term way, they've left us, they've passed away, what we realize is, wow, I actually still have access to that love within me. I miss them, I miss their presence, but the love has not died with them. They may have divorced me, but they can't divorce my love because I've got that inside me. That's still with me. Now let's shift to the anger. Let's shift to the depression. Same thing. Something has happened outside. Someone has said something, done something, or just shown up. Sometimes simply seeing someone makes us angry. Oh, get away from me, I can't see your face right now. As though somehow a face had the power to ruin our day. That person has spoken something, not spoken something, done something, not done something, simply appeared, not appeared. And we have turned on, based on our interpretation of that, which is much more insidious than love. Love is just this beautiful experience. But the anger, the pain, always has a story to it. It's always got a drama. I'm angry because you fill in the blank. I'm hurt because you fill in the blank. There's a drama. My interpretation of what you have said, what you have done, where you've appeared, where you haven't appeared. And I turn on my internal anger and pain manufacturing plant. And the way that I know it's not you is, you could walk out of the room and I'm going to sit here and seethe. Not like the air conditioner, where the farther away it gets, the less cold air I have. But you could get on a plane and fly to Paris. I'm still sitting here seething. I'm still in pain. I'm still furious. It's in me. I'm creating it. I'm manufacturing it. And what that means is, I am not a victim. So the bad news here is, it's no one's fault but ours. The good news here is, we can change that now. If I need someone else to behave in a certain way in order for me to be happy, well, I am a victim then. I'm a victim of their moods. I'm a victim of their karmic package. I'm a victim of their desires. I'm a victim of their awakening, how they want to live. But when I realize the truth that I'm not dependent on that I'm the one creating the anger within me, well, that's freeing. And remember I said that freedom is actually the highest goal of the spiritual practice. So if we are stuck anywhere, our spiritual practice is not going very well. If we are a victim anywhere, it's not going very well. And so take back those reins and ask yourself, why have I chosen to manufacture anger? Why have I chosen to manufacture pain? And then stop doing it. And we think that it just happens. But the truth is, most of us actually do have a level of control. Most of us know in front of whom we can throw a temper tantrum and scream and yell, and in front of whom we can't. Right? Doesn't matter how bad your mood is. You know, Puja Swamiji does a great impersonation of what so many families look like. We're inside, they're screaming and yelling at each other. And then the phone rings. We go, hello? Someone shows up at the door. Hey, come on in. No one says, go away, we're having a fight. So we actually have control. We say we don't, but we do. If you think for a moment, if someone said to you, you will win $1 million for every day that you can make it through without a temper tantrum, that you can make it through without getting angry. How many days do you think we'd be able to make it through, right? A lot. The issue is we don't have the incentive. We're attached on some very deep level to being the victim. It's going back to the analogy of the other day about the coffee stain on my couch. I want you to come and fix this. I want you to change. I don't want to take control. I don't want to have the power. I don't want it to be up to me. And you can do that. You can do that your whole life. You can come back your next life and do it all over again. The law of karma is really very, very compassionate and very patient. It'll just kind of keep waiting. You keep coming and coming and coming and doing this over and over again as long as you want. Or you can decide today, enough. When I first met Puja Swamiji, in less than a week, in the first few days, I asked him about fear. And he said to me, you fear because you don't trust. And I then gave him my story, which I won't go into now, but it's a good story, true story, of my life and my history of the first 25 years and what I had been through and what I had experienced and why I didn't trust and why I had fear. And it was a story that in every person up until that moment I had ever met, I had gotten really nothing but lots of compassion and love and oh. Puja Swamiji looks at me and he says, you're going to take that to the grave with you? I was 25. No. And he says, so you're going to give it up on your deathbed? No. And he says, how about a week before you die? How about a month before you die? And I'm thinking, is this a premonition? Is he saying, am I going to die this week? I say, no, God, Swamiji, I hope that long before that. And he looks at me and he says, you're waiting for someone to come in and draw the line for you. He said, you're waiting for someone else to come in and draw that line. He said, no one ever will. He said, it's up to you. You can carry this to the grave. You can give it up on your deathbed. You can give it up a week before you die, a month before you die. Or you can give it up today. We all have different things, different lines, different expectations. But it's very comfortable to feel like the victim. And yet, when we're on a spiritual path, we have to realize, well, this train, if we're really on it, the destination of this train is freedom. And if I'm really going to get on the spiritual train, or plane or car or whatever model of vehicle works best for your imagination, if I'm really going to get on that, well, this is going to freedom, which means I have to be prepared to go there. That must be where I want to go. It doesn't take us to victimhood. In the West, when we speak about anger, and I come from a background of psychology, and it's a really interesting paradox because when I was studying psychology up until about 23 years ago, the real core teaching of psychology was if you are angry, if you are in pain, you need to get it out. And so there are all sorts of techniques and teachings and ways and things that we do to get out the pain. And so whether it's a temper tantrum, whether it's a baseball bat, whether it's a punching bag, whether it's a pillow, whether it's an art project, whatever it may be, ways to get out that anger, as in literally take it out, express it. You're angry, shout. Okay, don't shout at your loved ones necessarily, but go in and shout. Over the last 2 decades, Western psychology is interestingly starting to overlap a lot more with Eastern spirituality. Now, Eastern spirituality has always said, don't get angry. Not about suppression, not about repression, not about denial, but simply about be aware of it, watch it, and let it dissipate. Do not engage with it. And for a while they were on opposite sides of a big chasm. But the West is now starting to move toward the East because what we now are learning neurologically is what the East has known for a long time, which is the more temper tantrums you throw, the more likely you are to throw a temper tantrum. If I eat something bad and I have food poisoning and I vomit it up, I feel much better. And I feel a little weak from vomiting it up, but ultimately your stomach is now much better. You get a bug, you vomit, you have diarrhea, you feel weak, but once it's out of your system, you feel much better. The interesting thing about metaphorically vomiting up our anger is it doesn't seem to go anywhere. We take it out and take it out and take it out, and then it's sort of this never-ending, bottomless, ever-growing pit. It just grows. We take it out, it grows. We take it out, it grows. It's an amazing phenomenon. It's not like bad food, that you can just vomit it up once and you're done. The more you take it out in that way, the more what in the East we call a sanskara, and in the West we call a neural network, neuronal patterning, the more that becomes, I get angry. Stimulus response. Okay, so if every time this happens, I throw a temper tantrum, it means now every time that happens, I'm much more likely to throw a temper tantrum. And this is where we need to gain control of the anger. Pretend or realize. Pretend until you realize, rather, that God is knocking on your door all the time. Right? I mean, if we can pull ourselves together that much for the next door neighbor, or for a friend who popped by? Can we pull ourselves together for the presence of God? And so recognize that we really do have that control and ask ourselves, why am I engaging this? When I'm in charge, when I have the choice, why am I choosing this? And remember, you always have an alternative. Whenever you're going to react, the first question is there an alternative? Is there an alternative way to react to this? And what I can promise you is, there is always an alternative. And most of us are in a situation where it's like we've done it this way forever. We know how that ends up. It ends up in misery, it ends up in pain, it ends up in broken relationships. So okay, now the trigger has come up again. Rather than going my default way, is there an alternative? Yeah, there is. And each of us has the freedom to choose it. Can't sit up here and force you to do it. But I can sit up here and tell you that you have the freedom and the choice. And that if you don't choose to do it in this life, again, no problem. There's no rush. Come back next life. Do it then. But you are going to have to keep doing this until we learn to choose differently. So, with that, I want to open it up to questions. I know that we have several. Janine, do you have them? Okay, great. Actually, in the meantime, before the questions, I wanted to just make one other quick point about depression. Somebody was mentioning to me the other day that a young woman going through a difficult phase in life had started taking antidepressants. And I want to speak to this for just a moment because it's become a real tragedy in our culture. Now, there is an aspect of a disease called depression that we know has neurological components, that we know has neurochemical components, and that we know actually responds well to medicine. The same way that organs of our body that don't function very well in diabetes respond to insulin. And there's nothing to be ashamed of if you have that disease of depression. And by that I literally mean we're looking at a long-term, a pervasive, not a situation dependent, but a pervasive illness of depression. It afflicts people the same way that diabetes afflicts people. The same way that all sorts of different chemical imbalances in the body afflict people. There's lots of ways to address it. I won't go into them all right here. A spiritual practice, of course, is always the best antidote. But the medicine is very, very helpful. And from a scientific standpoint and a spiritual standpoint, there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. If you need the assistance of that. However, there are a tragically enormous number of people who are on antidepressants who are not suffering from a disease of depression, but people who are simply sad. Things happen in our life that make us sad. People we love die. We get divorced, we get abandoned, we get left, we lose our jobs. We wake up one day and realize that we're 30 or 40 or 80. And oh my God, here's where my life is, and it's not necessarily what I pictured. And we feel sad. That is not clinical depression. That is an experience of human life that needs to be looked at and addressed and sat with, and just have some space made in your life. Loved one dies, cry, grieve. You go through a difficult time in your life. Take care of yourself. Do things to soothe yourself. Sit in the presence of the sadness. Allow the tears to flow. That is not an illness that requires medication. That is an experience that requires awareness and courage to simply be present with it. And so it's really important not to decide that someone is sad or going through a difficult time, oh, you need to be on medication, or oh, I should be on medication. Because that just sets up this tendency in our life to decide that when I don't want to deal with what's going on, well, there will be a pill. And whether it's a pill prescribed by my doctor for depression or whether it's something that I self-medicate with, either way, we are losing the opportunity to be present and aware of what the present moment is bringing us, which is sadness. There's nothing wrong with sadness. It's part of the spectrum of human life. But what's important is that we not attach a drama to it. That's where we get stuck, is in the perseveration of the mind, my inability to let go of the drama of why I'm sad. Tears are there, cry. But don't get lost in the drama of it. Stay present with the emotion, whatever it may be. And what you'll find is that emotions like waves tend to come and they build 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 and they peak and they crash and then they dissipate. And if we can just be present and aware with them, that's what gives us the ability to live a really full and open and courageous life. So I wanted to just talk about that point regarding depression for a moment, because A, when we need it, do not feel bad, take it. But B, do not medicate away human experience. Yes.
So the first question is going to stay with your theme of anger, and it really looks at how, as parents, do we deal with the anger that we sometimes see in our children.
So, first of all, as parents, our instinct is always to try to fix our kids, or to fix life for them, because we want the best for them. So they come home from school and everybody's, picking on them, and our first instinct is, well, I'll call the principal, I'll call these kids' parents, I'll put them in their place, I'll show them, how dare you, pick on my kid. We want to solve things for our children. But that isn't always actually the most useful for them. I mean, sometimes it is important, but in most cases, what's important is to just help them understand that an emotion is an emotion. They're experiencing anger, okay. Well, do you have a meditation area in the house? If not, you should. If you've got the space to have a full room, fantastic. If not, no problem. Do you have a corner of a room? If not, you should. And let them know that's a place to sit down and to experience whatever they need to experience. There is no emotion that is wrong. The only thing that is wrong is me making you the victim of my emotion. So I'm creating anger in me. Okay. Invite you to sit in our family meditation area as long as you need until you stop manufacturing anger. What's not okay is to give your brother a black eye, or a bloody nose, or to punch a hole through the wall. And so we need to distinguish between the emotion, which just is, and behavior, which absolutely is either appropriate or inappropriate. And as parents, we absolutely need to draw the line between what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior. You experience anger? Okay. And as parents, I would always say to your children, do you want to talk about it? Can I be here for you? And when they do, when they open up, you've got to bite your tongue from trying to solve the problem for them. Your best gift to them is to listen. And by all means, offer advice. You've got a lifetime of wisdom. But usually we go into it as in, oh, well, here's what you need to do. And really what our kids mostly just need is support and love, and to know, even when I'm angry, you still love me. I don't have to suppress who I am or be someone different. And that doesn't mean I get to give my sister a bloody nose or throw my dinner plate against the wall and crash it into a whole bunch of pieces. No, I'm angry, all right. Here's our meditation area. And as parents, it's important that we model that. Because our kids are going to do exactly what we do. So if when we're angry, we shout at each other, or we slam doors, or well, that's what our kids are going to do. If we hit, God forbid, that's what our kids will do. So as parents, model that. Don't feel shy to say, okay, Mom is feeling angry. I'm going to go meditate for a little while. I'm going to go sit in the temple for a little while. I'm going to go sit in our safe space for a little while, whatever we want to call that area. I'm going to go sit with God for a while. I'm going to go sit outside with the tree for a little while. Model that for them. They should not be afraid of their emotions, but they also should not feel like they are slaves of their emotions. Otherwise, as they grow, as they have desires and feelings and emotions, they're going to think, oh, well, I had anger, so I acted out. I had lust, I acted out. I had greed, I acted out. I had desire, I acted out. That's the last thing we want our kids to think. Is that just because you thought it or felt it, that somehow you had to act on it. Model for them what it looks like to need a time out. And don't be shy to say, Mom needs a time out. And when you come back, you're different. And they learn, oh, okay, nothing to be ashamed of. It happens to everybody. And you'll see they will learn, Mom, I need a time out. You could suggest it. Maybe you need a time out. Go sit, not as a punishment, not that you're bad, not that you're being rejected, not that I can't handle your anger. But just there is a tool, there is a way to deal with our emotions. And that's what we need to teach and model for our children.
This next question is a little long and takes us in a slightly different direction. So I'm very concerned and committed to conscious consumerism and environmental issues. How do I talk to family members who are not as committed as I am, or who believe the divine will take care of the world's problems? And as part of this, how can I help my family agree on a way to live our values of seva and stewardship?
So, changing our family members is It's one of the great enigmas of the world. If you talk to most people and you say, so what's your greatest stress, or what's the thing between you and happiness? 99 out of 100 people are going to tell you some attribute, some behavior, some personality style of a family member of theirs. Whether it's something mild, my kids don't clean up their room, or something bigger, my husband's an alcoholic, or anything in between. And our instinct in all of these cases is, well, I will change them. And the difficulty with that is that it very rarely works. I mean, parents can, of course, have an impact on their children in that way, and they should. But when you're dealing with spouses, siblings, your parents, it's very, very difficult to change another being. And what ends up happening, interestingly also, is that inside we also tend to revolt. And so what you find is that you get into all of these kind of power struggles. And I'll hear people sometimes say, well, you know, I actually know that I should do that and I could do that, but I don't want her to think that she's won. Or I don't want him to think that he won. I don't want him to think that I'm weak. And so we end up in all these really bizarre and convoluted struggles. And so when you speak about something like conscious consumerism, it also comes up with issues of just spirituality. I'm a meditator, I'm a spiritual person, I do yoga. My husband or my wife is only interested in, you know, surfing and hamburgers. What do I do? Trying to change him, trying to change her. Very difficult and not something that I would recommend. It tends to lead to nothing but stress. And again, this does not include parents to children. Parents absolutely should. It is your responsibility as parents to groom and discipline and give values to your children. But when you're dealing with husbands, wives, siblings, or the elders, it's not your responsibility to change them. And even if you know that you're going to change them for the good, it almost never works out well. Because they don't respond. Nobody ever says, oh, thank you so much for pointing out to me all the horrible ways that I was living in ignorance. Thank you, God. I'm so glad God has sent you into my life. People say, hell with you? It never works out. It just creates fight. So when you take things like conscious consumerism, meditating, a spiritual practice, vegetarianism, not drinking alcohol, all of these really important good attributes, all we can do is model them. And share gently information. And so, for example, as the question talks about conscious consumerism, so a lot of people just don't know. So share information. Hey, by the way, did you know? No judgment here, but just, did you know that actually that company whose shampoo you just bought tests their products on bunny rabbits? And actually that shampoo gets rubbed in the eyes of little bunnies? Did you know that? Most people don't know that. Did you know that that product, actually that coffee is grown in this country and they've got people, slaves basically, and the chemicals that they use in the field have polluted the whole area and everybody's got cancer? And the river that runs nearby is all polluted and people are dying? But you know, this brand of coffee is actually organic and the people who work for them make a fair living. If we offer it simply people really will make the right decision. But if we say to them, you should do what I say, if we do it with judgment, we make them feel bad, people will rebel. So we model it, we do it, we share the information. I've seen this a lot with vegetarianism. If you go into it as this moral thing, like if you are not a vegetarian, you are a bad person, the cow is holy and you are killing the holy cow, people rebel and they shut off. You can just see people's eyes sort of glaze over, like they are no longer with you. But if you can simply share information about the impact of animal agriculture, of a meat-based diet, on our environment, on hunger in the world, on food scarcity, water scarcity, people say, oh my God, I had no idea. So offer it gently with love and without judgment. And with regard to Seva and consumerism and all of that, yeah, in a family, of course, we make a lot of collective decisions, but we also have the right to make our own decisions. Feel free. You don't like what they're buying, buy your own. Stand up, model it, and slowly, 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 people will make the right decision. And if not, it'll be a great lesson for you in sadhana.
So I'm going to give you two questions because I think they're sort of on the same theme.
Okay.
I recently went to see my neighbor's Swami. When I got there, women were in one room and men were in another. Why can't they be in the same room? And also, why couldn't the woman see the Swami? Why is their ideology so old-fashioned? And the other question, because I think this came from a younger person in the group, is what is your message to the young generation?
Okay, so there are traditions that keep men and women completely separate. It's rooted in the concept of purity and celibacy. So this color, this saffron color, is a color that symbolizes that we have taken the vows of what is called sannyas. So it's vows of renunciation, it's vows of celibacy, it's vows of simplicity. And in certain traditions, in order to maintain the purity of the celibacy, they keep the men and women completely separate. Now, on a very personal level, and it's important to mention that I'm speaking only my own personal opinion here, to me, the highest restraint, the highest renunciation is not a renouncing of that which you don't have access to. It's a renouncing of that which you do have access to. So the highest celibacy is not going to be, I don't ever even look at a woman. The highest celibacy is going to be, again, just in my personal opinion, I move through the world seeing men and women, both, as soul. Instead of moving through the world seeing a distinction of male, female, young, old, handsome, beautiful, ugly, fat, thin, I move through the world seeing soul. And if I'm moving through the world connecting to soul, connecting to the divine within all, then there's no question of lust arising. Lust arises because I'm looking at form, not content. And so the highest level, again, personal opinion, highest level of sadhana is not going to be, I don't even allow myself to see or to be tempted. But even in the midst of female bodies or male bodies, depending on the gender of the renunciant, I'm not seeing sexy female. I'm seeing soul. I'm not seeing hot guy. I'm seeing soul. Ultimately, that's what our sadhana is supposed to take us to. And that's true whether you're a celibate or not. And when we talk about overcoming lust, well, it's not repression or suppression. It's about moving through the world, seeing content rather than form. So when I'm moving through the world, it's not, oh, you're hot, oh, you're great looking, oh, you're pretty, oh, you're that. It's, soul, 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 divinity, divinity, divinity. So that's my personal feeling on that. But again, there's a lot of traditions that have different ways of thinking. And you know, what's most important in life is to be very concerned about how we're living and as little concerned as possible about how other people are living. Especially if it's not impacting us. I mean, we should be deeply concerned about how our, the heads of our countries are living, for example. It's our responsibility. They've got power over a lot of people. We should be concerned about that. But in terms of in the community, how are these people doing and how are these people doing it? What's this one doing? You lose your whole life like that. Why are they like that? Why is he like this? Whole life goes in that nonsense. So unless what someone is doing has an impact on you or an impact on a country or the planet in a way that feels to you like this is harmful and maybe I need to do something about it, other than that, try to be as minimally concerned, minimally judgmental, as little as possible about what anyone else in the world is doing. And in terms of message to youth, there's a lot of messages to youth, but I think the most important is remember that who you are is whole and perfect and divine. As you grow, you're going to go through all sorts of identity issues. Oh, I'm too skinny, I'm too fat, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm not smart enough, I'm not a good enough athlete, I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough, I'm too much this one. We struggle with our identity. And of course, social media has just made it so much worse because then not only are we working with this identity, but we're curating this other, like, not quite so real identity out there. And it makes it very, very difficult. And it's very easy to identify as the body, as the grades, as the scores, as the color of our skin, as the popular one or the not popular one. And that leads you to misery. And so the more you can just keep going within and knowing, I'm divine. And one of the core tenets, teachings, we say, aham brahmasmi. Or on an even more simple level, soham. It's probably the most common mantra that I've learned for practice of meditation. Soham. I am that. The capital T, that. I am that. Aham brahmasmi. I am God. you've been given this beautiful body to move through the world. Whatever shape it is, whatever size it is, whatever color it is, it's yours. It's uniquely yours. And whatever skills you've been given, and everyone's been given different skills, use them. Love them. And don't worry. Don't worry about what skills other people have or where you stand on that level. Keep remembering, God has made me perfectly. Because God doesn't make mistakes. So God doesn't leave any of us half-baked. However you are is exactly however God has made you to be. And just as in a garden, the rose can never become a jasmine and the jasmine can never become a rose, but each of them is exquisite as they are. But if the rose is always wanting to be a jasmine, or the jasmine is always wishing it was a rose, or if the sunflower wished it were an apple tree, it could never happen. And they wouldn't be able to give the world the gifts of the rose, of the jasmine, of the sunflower, of the apple tree. So remember, you have very unique gifts. And some of them are going to come in short, round bodies. Some of them are going to come in tall, skinny bodies. And some are going to come in darker bodies. Some will come in fairer bodies. Some will come in bodies that can stick a ball through a hoop. Some will come in bodies that can make music out of a flute. Some will come in bodies that can paint. Doesn't matter. What matters is who you are. And just keep remembering that. Keep remembering that. And don't allow yourself to get lost in this identity of the body. Remember, you are perfect, you are whole, you are complete, you are divine. Because God not only is perfect, but remember that God is omnipotent. God can do anything. And so if we know that God lives within us, surely God would create a really nice home for himself or herself. Why would God create a home that wasn't nice? So if God lives within us, as we know that God does, and remember that always, God lives within me. It means God has chosen me to live within me. If I'm good enough for God, who cares what the guy sitting in front of me in math class says? Who cares what the photoshopped pictures in a magazine look like? God lives within you. Remember that. Time for one more.
Yes. Good. So this one is, there was a lunar eclipse on Guru Purnima today, this year. What does that signify? And I would just add that today is also the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon.
Oh.
So, what does that signify?
So we've spoken a lot today already about the significance of the moon. When there's an eclipse, and there's all kinds we know in the tradition of Jyotish, there's different do's and don'ts and teachings, and when it's powerful, when it's auspicious, when it's not auspicious, when you should eat, when you should not eat. But that's not what I need to go into here. What's important here for us on a universally significant level is The eclipse happens when that ability to reflect the light gets blocked. Whether it's blocked fully, or it's blocked halfly, or it's blocked just a piece. And so again, it just gives us yet another opportunity to ask ourselves, am I being eclipsed in my life? What is it standing between me and my ability to fully reflect God's light? And it's the same thing as I was speaking before about the full moon or the half moon or the new moon. It's all about the orbit of the moon. Is it full? Is it half? Is it new? Is there an eclipse? It's all about the angles, the sun, the earth, the moon. Those are the only three variables. It's not that from outer space a gigantic frisbee comes and, moves in front of the moon, blocking some of it. It's just the angles, the sun, the moon, the earth. At a certain angle, full moon, perfect reflection. Certain angle, new moon, moonless night. Certain angle, lunar eclipse. Certain angle, solar eclipse. But for us, what's important is in my life, because I don't have any control over now. We can't say, oh, an eclipse is coming, wait. Hold back the sun. Wait, slow down the moon. We don't have any control over that. But we do have control over our own lives. We do have control over our orbit, our angle. And so whether we use the metaphor of feeling like a moonless night or we use the metaphor of feeling like an eclipse, either way, whatever's more powerful and works better for you. Ask yourself, what is that? Why is that happening? And how can I get back in alignment, back in orbit, so that I'm able to fully reflect the light of the sun on all? And in terms of, and by the sun, of course, we mean the divine. We're not actually operating as reflectors of the physical sun. But how can I reflect the light of the divine on all of those around me? How can I be a full and beautiful reflector of that divine light, the same way that the moon reflects the sun's light on us? How can I, being showered with grace from God, from the Guru, from the universe, being showered with that grace, how can I reflect that on the world around? And lastly, in terms of the moon landing, it was a great feat of science, a great feat of engineering, a great feat of triumph over the natural world. But more than triumph, what we need is to learn how to live together. There's a lot of triumphs over space we've had, a lot of triumphs over nature we've had, a lot of ways in which, with our technology, with our science, with our engineering, we've learned how to fill a tank with oxygen and go to the bottom of the ocean, send a space shuttle up with fire and go into space, land on the moon, land on Mars, circle the earth. We're able to do all kinds of things these days. What we're not yet able to do is actually live here with 2 feet on the earth, in peace and love and harmony. And if we could make that the next feat of engineering that we were trying to accomplish, if every entrepreneur and creative innovator in the world could commit themselves to solve solving that rather than going to the moon, going to Mars? How can we make another planet livable? How can we know about life in outer space? How can we know our own selves? How can we know the people living in our four walls? How about the guy down the street? So let's try to innovate, to figure out what is it that we need to build such that we can live here with 2 feet on the earth, with love and peace and joy, rather than building bigger and better and more powerful machines to propel us off the earth into the water. And I mean, I'm a scientist here, so I love Discovery Channel. I love National Geographic. It's the only thing I ever watch on airplanes sometimes, is they'll have a great documentary of outer space or life under the ocean. So you're talking to someone who loves that stuff. And it's not the core highest of what we were put here for. We did not take human birth to be able to figure out how to land on the moon or on Mars. We took human birth to be able to figure out what that means. So by all means, let science keep happening, let engineering keep happening. It's great, it's exciting, it's wonderful, why not? But not instead of focusing on this. They need to both happen. One for our interest and our excitement, and one for actually the purpose of our life. Because the purpose of our life is right here, in this body, in this breath, on this earth, surrounded by our family members, our colleagues, our community, not to figure out how to go and live amidst the aliens. The earth is given to us as the mother, not to figure out how do we dominate, conquer. That's the highest science. So how do we live really in harmony with the earth, rather than how do we figure out how to dominate her? So let science and engineering keep happening, but let's make sure that we have an equal, if not more, amount of energy and creativity and innovation on life right here, on planet Earth, on Mother Earth. Are we good for Aarti? It's 6:30 approximately, I presume.